Good afternoon, and from all of us here at Across the Fence, happy Thanksgiving. There's perhaps no better day to talk about food than on Thanksgiving. Back in the 1980s, the term functional food was coined. Functional food refers to those that provide positive health benefits beyond their basic nutritional value. Things like whole grains, tomatoes, and walnuts are a few examples. Milk is also a functional food, but can milk be made even better? Across the Fence's Keith Silva tells us more.
The arrival of the milk truck is one of the rhythms of dairy farming. A business-as-usual routine that goes on every day, on every farm. But at this pickup, there's a slight change in the routine. This truck only picks up milk from 100% grass-fed cows. It's being marketed as grass milk, and for 14 dairy farmers in Vermont, it's a change from business as usual.
My daily news feed is coming from how well the grasses are doing, how well the cows are doing, and how the system is functioning.
The Beidler family have been grazing cows on their 100-acre farm in Randolph Center since 1998.
I didn't own a farm of my own, so we were having to start in with a mortgage and purchasing the equipment and the land and the cattle and everything, and realized that it was enough to pay a mortgage. But to have to pay for lots of equipment on top of it, we were hoping to avoid that. And I saw a grass-based farm as a window of opportunity. Any farm, if you really love what you're doing, that's the system which works well for your farm, and that's what has done well for us here.
Grazing fits Beidler's production system as a certified organic farmer, and he believes it's also a perfect match for Vermont.
I think the Vermont landscape does lend itself well to growing grass. It's a default option that happens naturally here. If soil gets scuffed or in your lawn or on a roadside, it comes back to grass almost immediately. And it's a healing plant. It's what our hills really want to grow other than trees.
Beidler takes his feeding program one step further than most other organic dairy farmers. His herd eats grass, and that's about it.
We haven't fed grain on this farm for 8 years, and I find it works very well. We were seeking self-sufficiency in one way, and sustainability too. I think we knew that grazing was a good thing, and then we wanted to take it one step further in reducing as much as we could. We did it very gradually. We started off, maybe feeding 12 pounds of grain 17 years ago was my average, and then we reduced it down to 6. And then by the time we stopped, we were only feeding 2 pounds of grain, and that was mainly just to get the cows to come into the barn, we thought. And oddly enough, the cows didn't need that to come into the barn. They come in on their own.
The frost eating did a little bit, but it was really like after we spread that compost.
Yeah. And then that turns the next year, then your grass is going to be that much better because of that clover. And it's like the system gets...
Beidler is a member of the Organic Valley Co-op, a farmer-owned cooperative that specializes in certified organic products. In January of 2015, Organic Valley started up a route for Vermont dairy farmers like Beidler who raise their cows on an exclusively grass-based diet. John Cleary is the New England manager for Organic Valley.
The grass milk is 100% grass-fed, and it really came about because we realized there was consumer demand for it. There were farmers that were already farming this way, and it was really as we started testing the milk and looking at the nutritional composition of the milk that we realized that 100% grass-fed milk actually has a different nutritional profile. So it's worth, pulling that milk to have it segregated into its own carton for those consumers that are looking for it.
A half gallon of Organic Valley grass milk sells for around $5.29, which is about 50 cents more than other Organic Valley milk. In comparison, a half gallon of conventionally produced milk, on average, sells for $2.69.
The cooperative needs to be smart and look to the marketplace, see what consumers want, because in the end we're trying to serve farmers. Farmers need to be aware of what consumers are looking for, and they need to respond to that. It's a certain type of consumer that's looking for sort of the purest product, in this case, a non-homogenized, 100% grass-fed. It's not going to be for everyone, but we're trying to find an organic option for the whole range of consumers.
Another difference in price is the price paid to the farmer.
So the conventional milk pricing is fairly volatile. It goes up and down based on supply and demand. Right now, conventional farmers are getting paid about $16 a hundredweight. Our regular organic valley farmers are getting paid somewhere around $35 to $40 a hundredweight, and the grass milk farmers are coming in somewhere around $42 to $45 a hundredweight.
It's a big difference.
It's a big difference. And part of it comes from the fact that cows that don't have that sort of high energy supplement of grain are going to make less milk, but the farmers are being, compensated to make up the difference financially.
A healthy bottom line benefits the farmer, but there's actual health benefits to grass milk. Researchers here at the University of Vermont classify grass milk as a functional food, which means it has a greater positive effect on human health than the nutrition in other milk. 100% grass-fed milk has more fatty acids in it, like CLAs and omega-3s, what doctors call good fats. Maybe the real bottom line is this: grass milk has more beneficial fats our bodies need to improve health and prevent disease.
So it's really saying that we found a way to make a very healthy milk. So all milk is healthy, but when it comes to the good fats that our bodies need, especially omega-3s, and getting them in the right balance between omega-3 and omega-6, we found that nature knows how to do it. And it turns out 100% grass-fed cows produce that kind of milk, and that's really worth a lot.
I really believe that grass milk is here to stay. It's always going to be a portion of the market. It's not likely to be the only the mainstream. There's a small segment of our population that is currently interested in that may well increase. We know it's a hot selling item now. I think there's a lot more potential for this because the benefits are just starting to get understood.
Currently, Organic Valley is the only national brand selling 100% grass-fed milk. It's a new way to think about milk, make more money for farmers, and improve our health. It's more than business as usual. In Randolph Center, I'm Keith Silva with Across the Fence.
Well, thank you, Keith. The most popular holiday plant in the country is the poinsettia. Poinsettias were first introduced here from Mexico back in the 1700s. Today, there are more than 100 varieties. To learn more about selecting a poinsettia and how to maximize the life of your plant, here's UVM horticulture specialist Leonard Perry.
There's nothing that really puts me in the Christmas spirit more than visiting a local greenhouse and seeing hundreds, if not thousands, of poinsettias, as we see here at Clausen's greenhouses in Colchester before the holiday season. And there's just so many different types. There's some new types in addition to the traditional red ones that you might want to consider. This is probably one of the most different. This is a rose series. It's a red and a pink rose. It actually looks kind of like a rose, very different. This is one that I've liked. It came out several years ago called Monet. A new one, a punch series. There's a sparkling and a nice punch with a little bit of white in the leaves. Traditional white. You can get just a traditional pink. One such as this, which is again a kind of different one with speckles in it. This has a lot of speckles. This is called Glitter. There's an older variety called Jingle Bells. It's really nice. And then there are the types with kind of white on the edges. That's called a marble type. And there's red and white marbles. And then for one that's, if you want a really maroon color, there's this new maroon color of poinsettia. So those are just some of the range of the different types. If you can't decide, how about a tricolor mix? Several put together, or even a couple of colors, as we see in the back with the punch series, the ice punch punch and the sparkling punch, the red and the pink with the white in it, we saw earlier in the small size. So again, if you have a small space or want to put them on small tables, the small sizes, but the big ones, even you can hang ones like this. I often get one of these. They're so full, take the hanger off and just set that on a table, and it just is beautiful there. So as far as choosing them, a couple of other things to keep in mind when you do go out and look for them. Keep in mind that these colored parts are actually modified leaves called bracts. The bits in the center, the little yellow parts, are the flowers. And that's what you want to look at, because when choosing one, you want those either not open or still very tight. If they're all the way open, that means the poinsettia is pretty old and going past, hasn't had the right care. If they're not even there, again, a good sign that hasn't had the right care. So you want these little yellow buds in the center, which are the true flowers. Also, look at the foil for a couple of reasons. One is often it hides lack of leaves, or in this case, kind of one-sided. This didn't get enough light on this side. You want one that's balanced all the way around. So look for that. And also, the foil, attractive as it is, will hold water if it doesn't have a hole. Usually they don't. So when you get that home, either take the foil off, or what I do is make a small hole in the bottom, put it in a saucer to keep the water from draining onto furniture. That way you can see how much water is there. You don't want the poinsettia sitting in water. That's one of the things it doesn't like. But first, to get it home, once you've chosen one, you want to protect it from cold. They really don't like cold that we have up here. Very sensitive. That can make the flowers turn bad. So make sure if they're small, in a paper bag or this sleeve, as it's called, for plants, make sure it's fastened at the top, either with tape or a staple. So a good store will do that. Insist on that, or else your plant may not live when it's coming home. Make sure the car is warm. All these things, remember, it doesn't have a coat on. That's all it's got to protect it from the cold. And then once home, you want to make sure, again, that it doesn't get overwatered. If in doubt, don't water. Keep it on the dry side and make sure it drains well. And keep the poinsettias away from windows or wood stoves. They really don't like warm or cold drafts on them. Other than that, they're pretty foolproof, will last a long time. And one of the things to keep in mind, too, that I often get questions about, even from my daughter this year, is the poinsettia poisonous to people or pets? And the answer is no. That's a myth. It's not poisonous to pets or people. Pets may sample a leaf, like our cats did this year, and with the milky sap in there, they'll find quickly that that doesn't taste very good and doesn't agree with their tummies. But these are not poisonous. And there's some other holiday plants you might consider, though, if you want something different or plants to last a long time. One is the cyclamen. These come in various sizes, from real small to real big. This is actually a miniature cyclamen. There are ones with bigger flowers. It's a regular cyclamen. Again, purples, whites, bicolors, reds like this. This is a good stage to buy a cyclamen. You want a few flowers open, a few buds, and look underneath, because you want some other flowers coming along as well, some of those buds. The cyclamen likes it cool. Poinsettia likes it warm. This likes it cooler, maybe 55 to 65, and it likes even watering. This one, too wet or too dry, leaves may drop off and turn yellow. So even watering with a cyclamen, not sitting in water but not too dry either, will keep this for the longest time. Another one that you often see in stores all over is the calancho. This is actually a succulent, meaning it's very succulent leaves, very thick. It's kind of a dry, xeriscape type plant, so it really doesn't like to be overwatered. This comes in reds, oranges, yellows, purples, a lot of really bright colors. So again, a little bit on the dry side. This will last for weeks, probably, maybe 2 or 3 months even, with the flowers coming on those. So that's a great one to have, as is, if you want one, probably the longest lasting is the Christmas cactus. This is the one I've heard people say they got from their grandmother, they've had for 20 or 30 years. As it grows, gradually repotted every few years, maybe a clay pot. But this is in a hanger, but you can also put it in just a regular pot on a table. And this will bloom around Christmas. Purples, there's whites, there's reds on the Christmas cactus. So again, a cactus, so again, don't overwater this, keep it a bit on the dry side if anything, and hopefully you would get many years of bloom out of this. So, just to recap with a poinsettia, don't overwater, Keep them away from drafts, away from windows, away from wood stoves. They don't like that either. And treat as a house plant with as much light as you can give it after the holidays and fertilizer. For University of Vermont Extension, I'm Leonard Perry.
Well, thanks, Leonard. Our next segment centers on Vermont's apple growing industry. Back in the late 1800s, northern Vermont was one of the most important apple growing regions of the world. Vermont apples supplied markets across the country, even into Canada, South America, and Europe. The apple industry and the variety of apples available have changed significantly in the past 100 years, and now there's a growing demand for a certain kind of apple. Across the Fence's Rebecca Gollin explains.
Growing apples is old hat in Vermont. For growers like Barney Hodges, not much has changed since his parents planted their first orchard in 1974.
We grow about 200 acres of mostly McIntosh, but also Empire, Cortland, Paula Red, McCowan, and Honeycrisp.
Hodges is a wholesale grower. He packs the majority of his apples to be eaten fresh, shipping to stores around Vermont and the Northeast. As one of the top specialty crops in the state, apples are worth about $20 million to the Vermont economy. Most of that money coming from those fresh apples that are sold for consumption. But what about the apples that are too small or blemished to go to market?
When you're growing fresh apples, you'll always have a certain amount of the fruit that are going to be seconds or what we call utility fruit. Traditionally, those fruit have gone to relatively smaller fresh juice processors, but that's usually been done at a real low price for the growers. And for a number of years, that price was so low that growers could scarcely justify picking the fruit.
But many growers are rethinking the way they do business. Apples that were once just afterthoughts have become such a sought-after commodity, growers cannot meet the demand. The change? Hard cider.
The growth in hard cider production, not just in Vermont but nationwide, has been so significant in the range of about 50% annual per year for the last several years.
Hard cider is the fermented, alcoholic version of sweet cider, made from unfiltered apple juice. The drink has a long history that dates back to the nation's earliest settlers.
It's a uniquely American beverage. Traditionally, hard cider in colonial times was the drink. I mean, everyone all the way down to kids was drinking cider because clean water wasn't always available, and apples grow here very well.
As time went on, most of the trees that produced the best apples for cider were replaced with sweeter varieties better suited for juice and pies. But recent trends toward both local and gluten-free foods have led to a renewed interest in hard cider. It has also created a demand for those second apples, as well as for the less well-known varieties that were traditionally used. That's where Bradshaw comes into the picture.
What you got on this one? 22 still, all right.
Our varieties are traditionally McIntosh, Cortland, Empire, and similar, some Honeycrisp. And the question is, are those going to be the best apples to use in their products? Right now, they are the majority of the apples they're using in their products because that's what's out there.
It's been an industry standard that no one second-guessed, until now.
The time has come to kind of figure out, is there a model that, it's a price that the cider makers want to pay and that the orchards can still make a profit off of.
Bradshaw and colleagues at UVM brought together a group that included growers and cider makers. It was one of the first steps in a multifaceted research project aimed at answering that question.
We met with the growers, the cider producers, and sort of laid out sort of big picture, brainstormed ideas and protocols for how we were going to carry this out. One of the things that both the growers and the cider makers really felt strongly about was that they wanted us to work with them and to keep the mindset that we're looking to create a uniquely Vermont product.
Terry's study is important because he's going to provide growers with real data of what to plant and why and how it'll grow.
We're looking at this really on a large scale, from cost of production of apples, cost of production of cider, where those two can come together, and carrying that out to try to measure the total impact of this sector on the Vermont economy.
Okay.
Bradshaw believes that impact will be significant. On this day, a number of cider makers have come together to conduct the next phase of the project. This is the part where things get messy.
They're going through single varietals. We're pressing them and then testing them for how that cider tastes. So every varietal is getting the same type of yeast, and then each cider maker will monitor a certain batch of it, and then after a while there'll be a tasting to see kind of what varieties yield what kind of taste, if there's apples that are better or worse, and balance that against what the farmer and the orchards think work for them. So it's a long process. We aren't going to decide tomorrow and all of a sudden have apple trees everywhere, but it's a starting point.
The group collected the juice of 14 apple varieties, including Vermont standards, as well as some of the harder to find types. Along with the replicated trials, turning the juice into hard cider, Bradshaw will take samples of each back to his lab for testing.
This is something we're going to be building on for many years, so I intend on a number of these orchards to continue to go back to also find similar orchards or maybe the same fruit grown in a different production system. And out of all that, every time we collect fruit, we're going to be pressing juice, and we're going to start to build a database of juice chemistry characteristics that come out of these fruit that are grown at this orchard in Vermont.
That information will benefit growers and cider makers alike.
Also interesting to find out what the growers that are participating in the study, what they think is, what are options for them for supplying us as cider makers, which apples are easiest to grow, which ones require the least amount of inputs, what ones can they supply to us at the best cost for getting cider to our customers at a good price.
This group approach results in a level of collaboration that would normally be unusual for competitors.
We're competitors if you only consider Vermont as the marketplace, but if you look at the Northeast or the country or the world as a potential market, then getting together as an industry is the smartest thing we could do.
I think the cider industry and the cider category is so young that there's plenty of room for everybody and there's plenty of room for growth. We all need the orchards to get the juice to make the product. So figuring out a way to make it all work benefits us all.
My hope is that out of this, that growers feel comfortable to try growing some interesting varieties. And this study is also, it's unique because as a group we got together and said, like, we would like you to grow these varieties, and growers are in the room too saying, these are some varieties we think would grow well here. And we're also trying to choose varieties that, that have some sort of regional identity to them, so that out of this we develop terroir for New England, terroir for Vermont, so that people, that come here are experiencing the history and heritage of apples that grow well in New England, and then also that have practical value.
Growing apples for a growing industry, and working together to create a uniquely Vermont product.
Time is of the essence to be able to meet the demand of these really fast-growing businesses in the hard cider industry. Their needs are right now, and so we're going to do what we can within our model to supply that and maybe even beyond.
1556.
It's a new look at an old tradition, and it could be coming to a store near you in the near future. In Cornwall, I'm Rebecca Gollin with Across the Fence.
Well, thank you, Rebecca. As we close out our Thanksgiving Day program, we want to say thanks and give tribute to our veterans. Back in September, the community of Shelburne dedicated a new Veterans Memorial that was 5 years in the making. From the Shelburne Parade Grounds, here are some of the poignant sights and sounds from that dedication.
Raise the flag.
Would you all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge my allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is a proud moment in our town's history. Today, the town of Shelburne not only thanks and honors our veterans for their service, we also dedicate a particular place to recognize and remember those who have served our country in times of war and in times of peace. Today, I ask you to look around. We stand in the midst of patriots and families and friends of those who have so nobly served our country.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so
I've come here early today and just absolutely humbled beyond the extent of your imagination of the people I've met here today. However, in preparation for this task, from the day that Bud asked me to be part of it, has truly opened my eyes, my mind, and my heart to ensure that veterans like here today receive the respect that they deserve, because without them, we would not be here today and sharing this special moment together.
and the home of the brave.
I'm sure that within many of you there is a little tear in your eye because taps, I'm not an emotional individual normally, but taps usually does something to me when I hear it, and I've heard it several times over my lifetime, several times in my career in the Army at various and sundry things. Unfortunately, many were funerals. And so I think probably for all of those who are here, I hope that maybe it has affected you somewhat, that it has affected me, that we all have a little tear in our eye for what has happened.
I have nothing further than again and again and again to thank all of you for being here today to help us celebrate our Veterans Memorial. Thank you very, very much, and this rain stayed away. Appreciate your being here, folks. Thank you.